Living next to your rival could sharpen your aim or give him a clean shot at you. For Elias Blackwood, a man who had spent his life dodging commitments, his late uncle had taken careful aim from beyond the grave and fired straight through his easy plans. The telegram, stained with the grime of a dozen telegraph offices, had been brutally succinct. Uncle Silas gravely ill. Return to Iron Creek immediately. Stop. Elias had pocketed the 2 weeks' pay he was owed from the railroad gang and boarded a train east, his mind painting a picture of a deathbed handshake, a heavy set of keys, and a spread of land so vast he could finally stop running. What he rode into on a dusty, wind-scoured afternoon was a freshly dug grave, a hawk-faced lawyer named Fletcher Crow, and a sealed envelope that contained a clause designed to torment any sensible man. The choice was a trifold trap: marry the widow of the neighboring rancher, a woman he'd never met, within a year, or lose the entire inheritance to the territorial government for a schoolhouse he'd never see. Before we get to the showdown, tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. There's something special about knowing this story is reaching fellow Western lovers from all over. And if you love a tale where love is a battlefield forged in fire, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow, I'm sharing a story about a runaway bride and an outlaw that will knock your boots clean off. The Wyoming wind, that ceaseless entity, carried grit and a profound sense of disappointment as Elias Blackwood stood before the granite headstone of Silas Josiah Vance. At 6'5", Elias was accustomed to towering over most men and their problems. But here, under the immense, indifferent sky, he felt small. The inheritance felt less like a prize and more like a chain. Fletcher Crow, a man whose spine seemed to be made of the same rigid material as his spectacles, cleared his throat with a sound like gravel shifting. The small, eager crowd, the entire social circuit of Iron Creek, it seemed, pressed closer, their collective breath held. "The Vance Star Ranch," Crow announced, his voice cutting through the breeze, comprising 8,000 acres of prime grazing land, 500 head of cattle, breeding stock, the main house, bunkhouse, and all improvements thereon, shall pass to my nephew, Elias Blackwood, upon the fulfillment of the following condition. Elias's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. 8,000 acres. The number was staggering. He'd spent the last 5 years driving spikes for the railroad, his world defined by the length of a steel rail, his hands permanently stained with tar and calluses. This was the dream that had always shimmered on the horizon, always just one more hill away. The heir, Crow continued, pausing for effect, must marry Mrs. Clara Thorne, widow of the late Benjamin Thorne of the neighboring Sunstone Ranch, within 1 calendar year of this reading. Should he fail to do so, the entire estate shall be donated to the Wyoming Territory for the establishment of a schoolhouse in Iron Creek. The words landed not with a thud but with a razor-sharp slice. A marriage of convenience? To a stranger? A murmur, part shock, part gleeful scandal, rippled through the crowd. Elias's gaze, sharpened by a sudden hot anger, swept across the faces until it found her. She stood apart, a solitary figure wrapped in a practical black dress that did nothing to soften her straight-backed posture. Clara Thorne. Her chestnut hair was pinned back with severe efficiency, but it was her eyes that held him. A mix of hazel and green. They held a weariness that spoke of seasons of solitude and hard-earned resilience. She met his stare without a flicker of hesitation, her lips pressed into a thin, unyielding line that promised no easy surrender. Later, in the musty confines of Fletcher Crow's office, Elias leaned over the lawyer's desk, the scent of old paper and leather filling his nostrils. "Why, Crow? Spell it out for me. Why her?" The lawyer carefully tucked the will into a calfskin satchel. "Your uncle was many things, Elias, but he was not a fool. He watched that woman pull her husband's failing ranch back from the brink of bankruptcy with nothing but grit and a ledger book. After Benjamin Thorne died of a fever 3 winters back, she kept Sunstone running alone, turning a profit when men with twice the hands were selling out. Silas said she had more sense in her little finger than most men have in their whole bodies." Crow fixed Elias with a piercing look. "He figured she'd be the anchor to keep you from running the Vance Star into the ground. You have a reputation, son, a wanderer, a man who burns through paychecks and moves on when the work gets tough. Silas wanted you anchored." The truth stung because it was etched into the history of every town Elias had left behind. He had always been chasing the next thing, convinced that contentment was always over the next ridge. Now the ridge was here, and it came with a keeper. That evening, as the sun bled orange and purple behind the Tetons, Elias rode out to the Sunstone Ranch. It was smaller than the Vance Star, maybe 1,500 acres, but its character was immediately apparent. Every fence line was taut, every gate swung true on its hinges. The barn, though weathered, showed fresh patches of paint where needed. This was not just land, it was a testament to stewardship. Clara Thorne emerged from the simple clapboard house, wiping her hands on a worn apron. Up close, she was handsome, with a beauty that wasn't cultivated in parlors but earned under the sun. Fine lines around her eyes spoke of squinting into the distance, and her hands, though clean, were marked with the calluses of honest labor. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice as steady as the land she stood on. There was no coyness, no false pleasantry. "I suppose we are obliged to discuss your uncle's proposal." "Ma'am," Elias began, removing his hat and holding it in a death grip, "I'm hoping we might find a way to make some sense of this situation." "Then let me save us both some time," she interrupted, crossing her arms over her chest. The gesture was not defensive, but declarative. "I am not a convenience. I have bled for this land, cried for it and fought for it. I will not be a stepping stone for a drifter looking for an easy score." Her directness was a cold splash of water after a long, dusty journey. It was refreshing and terrifying. "And if I'm not that man?" he challenged, meeting her gaze squarely. "Are you?" The question hung between them, simple, sharp, and utterly devastating. Elias could have lied. He could have spun a tale of changed ways and newfound maturity, but something in her level gaze demanded honesty. "A part of me is, ma'am. I won't deny the appeal of that land. It's everything I've ever thought I wanted. But there's another part, a part that's grown tired of the dust. Maybe your husband and my uncle saw something in this valley, in this life, that I'm only just beginning to feel." She considered this, her head tilted slightly. "That's almost convincing, Mr. Blackwood. What if I was interested in what I could do for you?" The word surprised them both, tumbling out with an earnestness he hadn't known he possessed. Clara studied him for a long, silent moment, the only sound the sigh of the wind through the cottonwoods that lined her creek. "Words are easy," she said finally. "Out here, they blow away on the next breeze. So, here's my offer. You may court me, properly. But I will not make it easy, and I will not pretend to have feelings I do not. If you want a wife who will swoon at your sighs and laugh at your jokes, you should start looking elsewhere." She took a step back toward her house, then paused, looking back over her shoulder. "But if you truly want a partner," a true, albeit small, smile touched her lips, transforming her face, "then you'd better prove you can keep up."